Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Peter Noonan. Coach Noonan is the head powerlifting coach at Hendrickson High School, along with leading up the strength and conditioning program for football. He also coaches outside linebackers. He hosts a podcast, Hanging with Coach Noonan, along with Iron Speed Chat and Disruption Chat. He has a Bachelor's of Science from Florida State and a Master of Education from Lamar University. Noonan is on the NCSA State Advisory Board. He's also on the NHSSCA Marketing Committee, and he's a founding board member for the Hispanic Texas High School Football Coaches Association. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Man, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm excited. I love what you do. And second, kudos to you, man. You got the mouthful of the association, the Hispanic Coaches Association. Way to go, man.
You know, I never thought I'd get them down. I'll tell you, the ones that's really hard, the ones that are really hard are the track guys, because that is a lot of letters. This I was able to write out so that I could actually read it. And plus, I practiced it about 10 times before you come on. That helps.
Yeah, it does.
So, with everything you do, I probably know you more from Twitter as being a powerlifting coach and some of the stuff you put on there about your powerlifting team. How did you end up in powerlifting?
So I powerlifted in high school. I grew up in Houston, Texas. I went to Bel Air High School. We kind of, had a very small powerlifting team. I wasn't very good. Just kind of had that bug, and then left, went to college, came back, and it wasn't until I would say my second coaching job when I moved out to the Dallas area at Crandall, about southeast of Dallas, that I got re-exposed to powerlifting. And from there, just, being at meets and working with the other coaches. I didn't directly coach powerlifting then. It just kind of had this rediscovery and this growing love for it. Not to say I didn't have it when I did it as an actual, high school athlete. But I didn't realize where it would take me and how much I loved it until it was taken away and then reintroduced. And then when I went to community high school, buddy of mine that unfortunately passed away several years ago really kind of showed me more about how to lift for powerlifting and just a lot of the ins and outs, and from there, and just working with him, lifting with him. Unfortunately, when I went to West Mesquite, we didn't have powerlifting, but I took a lot of what he taught me and was able to use it and apply it to my own self. And so then when I went down to Santa Gertrudis in Kingsville, I was able to work and continue a really strong powerlifting program down there that previous people had already established. And it was really cool. But it was really humbling because that South Texas region 5 it's probably one of the toughest in the entire state, if not the toughest. And then when I came to Hendrickson, I discovered that arguably the next toughest is the region 2, is this really weird, long Central Texas that kind of extends on the south side of the DFW Metroplex all the way to like the north side of San Antonio. So there's a huge range of schools and talents and some really awesome coaches. So, just it's grown. And then as I've dove deeper, just, being blessed to have a mentor and a friend like Monty Sparkman, who's opened doors and created connections with guys that, mentored him. It's just been invaluable. And then to be able to give the little bit of knowledge that I have to other coaches is just really awesome, man. And I think one of the best things about powerlifting is just how how much camaraderie can be had between, the athletes, each other, you and them as coach and athlete, but then coaches together. You just start to grow, and you're happy sharing ideas. You realize like there's really not a whole lot of secrets. We all have some really talented kids, some, middle of the road kids, and some training wheel kids that, you don't want to kick them away, because you never know who's going to turn into, just a really solid competitor.
You mentioned Coach Sparkman. I talked to him last night, kind of getting ready for this, just to see, what gets missed in these conversations. It's easy to talk about some of the stuff we will talk about later, because that's the fun stuff to talk about. But, what are some conversations that don't get had? And we kind of got into this deal. It's a dangerous sport. I mean, you're dealing with heavy weights, maximal, pushing. You're seeing failed attempts. A bad failed attempt could really hurt a kid. So, in saying that, to become a qualified powerlifting coach, you have to put a ton of time in and not just hand that position to somebody that really doesn't know what they're doing. So if you're a young powerlifting coach and you're trying to break into this and you're really trying to help your athletes, where's the best place to start?
Under the bar yourself. I've not competed since I left high school. It is something that I really want to do. I know this past summer, Monty competed for a good friend of his, and they had a kind of like a charitable powerlifting event to raise money for medical bills and stuff. And that's something I really wanted to kind of aim to compete in. It just had a scheduling conflict. I think we were going out to Arizona to go see my sister and my new nephew. And at the end of the day, family's going to come come second behind faith. But I want to compete. I love challenging myself, trying to get my numbers better. But I also want to get my other health numbers better, A1C, blood pressure, all that good stuff. Although when you talk about the dangers of powerlifting, it is difficult to keep your blood pressure down, because, you see kids, you talk to them, you coach them on how to do things, how to spot, how to bail the lifts right. And even your veteran kids brain fart, and you're like, you're seconds away from watching fingers get smashed because they let go of the bar and they want to put their hands on the spotter arms, and you're like, what are you doing? Or you see them kind of push too heavy on a deadlift attempt, and their back looks like a dog trying not to dookie himself. Like, it's scary. But I think first and foremost, if you truly want to be a powerlifting coach, then you have to spend time under the bar with those main three lifts. Not to say that like a more Olympic focused coach couldn't be a powerlifting coach, but the mindset and the attack is different. You're talking about preparing for 3 lifts versus 2 lifts. If you're an avid CrossFitter, it's a whole different mindset, right? We're not doing these WODs and endurance challenges. We're 9 lifts or 9 attempts out of 3 lifts, and we're just trying to get that rhythm and understand the ins and outs. I think the next thing is, at least in the state of Texas, you have to know the rule book in and out. You need to be a certified judge, or at least working towards that. If you can judge some meets, you need to judge meets. I would say you need to do your homework. If you were like a sport coach, you should know the rule book of the sport you're going to coach, but you need to know the rule book of powerlifting. You need to know what acceptable depth is on squat. What are the commands? What are they looking for on bench press? What are they looking for on deadlift? And then, just reaching out to people that you feel or are knowledgeable at the level in which you're trying to coach at. Not to say that you shouldn't go listen to the greats like Ed Cohn and Dave Tate and the Westside Barbell stuff, but you got to understand, like, those are, a lot of that stuff is geared more towards advanced lifters in some respects. But Monty and I have had conversations, like the way that Dave Tate coaches people so simplistically, but so directly, it's awesome. But at the same time, he's put in all that time, so he can be kind of direct and an a-hole sometimes. But again, there's definitely a lot of time spent under the bar. So yeah, first and foremost is get under the bar. Every now and then, I'll throw a bench shirt on. I haven't gotten into a squat suit in I don't know how long. Maybe one day when I'm really getting back into trying to compete, I'll put that on. But at least a bench shirt, because understanding what that feels like for these kids is difficult. If you're not used to it, because how you coach in a bench shirt like a katana versus how you coach in a banded shirt is very different. And those are those ins and outs that I don't think most coaches know. And I'm not saying, but by any means that I'm an expert. I ask questions all the time. But if you don't ask questions, you don't try, you're not going to know. And so therefore it's going to be difficult for you to better coach your kids. For me, I have a couple of returning lifters that are really passionate about it. So I look to them to be those additional, in practice, in meet coaches. If a kid can't find me, go find this kid or that kid, because they've done it for a while. And eventually I think what I would love to have is a few more each year. I had a discussion with some of my girls the other day, and I said, we don't have any real reason to label anybody as a captain. There's nothing in a powerlifting meet that really needs the title of a captain, but you are responsible for the environment that we train in, and how we perform at meets is going to be a reflection of how we train. So if it's chaotic and disruptive and disorganized, you have every right to step in and say, hey, this is our team practice and we're going to hold to a certain standard. And if there's another issue that goes above that, then you come find me and let me know. But I'm going to give you an opportunity to grow up a little bit. And it's wonderful. It's truly a blessing to have the number of kids that have shown up in this first week of practice, the number of kids that showed up in the first informational meeting. Do I anticipate that everybody will stay with it? No. And I know that some are really sticking their toe in the water, and they think that powerlifting is this get stronger thing that's going to make me more fit. But we missed the part about the competition, which is the real, in essence, it's the real focus. But the ones that are bought in, I would be lying if I didn't say it had to do something with the way in which I interact with them, and they see me and what I consistently do for myself. So, that's a really long answer to simply say, just get under the bar and work.
There was a few different ways we can go with that, and then there at the end, I think you kind of decided it for me. You talked about Dave Tate and those guys. Louis wanted everybody in that gym to be a coach, and then now as you look back, a lot of those guys have successful gyms of their own because they learned to coach while they were doing it. You were expected to help everybody there. You were to make them better so that they would get better than you and then make you better. Taking that to the high school level, getting the kids proficient at what they're doing so that they can help the younger kids. They can help somebody at a meet. Like you said, there's not captains, but you need team leaders. How do you get the buy-in at such a young age where they'll start taking that on themselves?
the biggest deal is just build relationships with those kids, and just have conversations with them and say, hey, on the guys that I consider my team leaders, they're all seniors. They've powerlifted for at least 2 years, and a couple of them are on their 4th year. So they're more experienced from a competition standpoint. The other thing is their demeanor. They command respect from their peers. One is definitely because of his stature. I mean, he's 6'4", 6'5", 340 pounds. Like, when he speaks to you, you're probably going to listen. But he's also a gentle giant. He when he goes and talks to somebody, it's about getting them better and challenging them. The other guy just, he's about my height. He's about, being anywhere from 5'6" to 5'8", and he loves powerlifting. He loves it. So for me, it would be foolish not to empower him. What I have to do with him is rein him in and be like, whoa, buddy, you don't know everything, and I want to help you learn more, but let's make sure that we're speaking the same language and saying the same thing, so that when you go and help another athlete and then I come behind, it's not this really separated kind of conversation. On the girls' side, I think I only have 2 senior girls that have come out consistently. Everybody else is a junior or a sophomore. So the best thing about it is they're all really close. The girls have been the best recruiters for the girls. And then, last year, it was really awesome. I got to be part of bringing the first female state qualifier to Hendrickson in powerlifting in school history. And she was a freshman. So she set the bar really high, and I said, hey, buddy, you gotta take the lead on this. I said, you're kind of the alpha female. Now there are others that are very strong as well that will continue to grow and push her. But I think one of the best things is, because of the weight classes and where certain ones fall, where I don't have too much intra weight class competition. So I don't have to have these like cliques and divisions. It's a huge blessing, because it could go south really fast if, I've got 3 148s and they're all really, really great. And there's 3 spots on the roster, and now I only have 9 more slots for the team, and I don't, and everybody else is like divided between, team this girl and team that girl. And just the times at which we have to schedule our training. There's kind of like this afternoon group, and there's a morning group. At least with the girls. With the guys, most of my best guys are all coming out of football. So we've already established a lot of these standards. And then as the newer people kind of come into the fold, they figure it out. Like, there's a process to this. You follow this, and you do this, and if you don't, then there's the door. Like, and the biggest thing for me is the weight room is a very inclusive place, because the weight gives zero cares about who you are. They don't care your color, your creed, your orientation. They don't care. 45 pounds is 45 pounds. If you don't lift it, you don't lift it. And it wasn't because you were black, white, brown, or blue. It's because you weren't strong enough, or you had bad technique. You had a bad day at school. Great. There's the weight room. Go get your anger out. You had a great day. Good. Go push some more weight. you know. So I want that inclusivity, but, got to be safe first and foremost, got to be sound technically, and got to be very intentional in what we're doing. That's a big focus for us. I think this year more than even last year is that intentionality. And so creating those team leaders, these are also people that are intentional about what's going on and about, for sure, about their growth in the sport.
So in Missouri, there might be a few schools that do powerlifting, but not like it is in Texas, North Carolina, some of them other states that really take to it. So with my experience, you have plenty of time to prep. You'll run a 6-week prep before you hit a powerlifting meet competition. And then that'll be the one you have for, however many months it takes to get ready again. You have a season. You have kids coming out of football, like you say. How do you have them ready for the grind of lifting maximal weights over the course of that season, and how long does it last?
So for us, our competition season is like all of January and all of February, and then postseason is basically it's 2 weeks in March, but there's a week in between. So it goes girls regionals is usually the first weekend in March. Then it's boys regional, then it's girls state, then it's boys state. And so by middle of March, we're done with all of powerlifting. As far as really trying to keep them fresh, part of it is just manipulating the schedule. I'm fortunate enough to have such a large number of kids to pull from that I can kind of alternate. When I was at Santa Gertrudis, our heavyweight female hit like her regional qualifying total within the first 2 meets, and then I shut her down from a meet standpoint in competition until regional. I was like, "There's no reason for you to lift." We hosted a meet at our school at the beginning of February, and I think that was like the first meet she had like 2 or 3 weeks from the last one. So she had a long gap, and then we're going to host a meet. I'm going to let you lift in our home meet, and then she didn't lift again till the beginning of March. That's kind of an ideal situation in my opinion. Hit on the girls' side, hit that qualifying total, chill them out. Maybe if they're young, get them at least another meet so that they're not, so spaced out and they're not so freaked out come the big, regional meet, because that's a tough deal. When you're on that stage in front of some of the best lifters in your area and potentially even best lifters in the state, because there's definitely kids that, they don't get out of the regionals meet that no doubt would compete at the state level easily. So on the guy side, it is difficult because there is no regional qualifying total, right? And it's that dog eat dog fight for top 12 spots. So on the guy side, I think it's a matter of just kind of playing the long game. If it's a kid who's probably not going to qualify, we'll let them go 1 or 2, and then they're done for the year, right? If there's somebody that's going to qualify, we try to space them. On the one hand, teenage kids can recover a lot faster than 20 and 30 and 40 and 50-year-old people, but you got to be safe. I don't know that there's a perfect way to do it because every kid is different, right? If a kid's got nagging injuries, you may have to shut them down. And if that they're just in a funk, maybe they need to lift through it. We're going to try something this year where we're going to host a rotational league between the 4 high schools in Pflugerville and a couple of other schools. And that's where I'm going to lift a lot of my JV and B team type kids. Now we don't lift everybody equipped. We lift them, raw as well, especially on the JV. You got to earn. I fully believe in you got to earn your gear. It's not just going to be handed to you. So programming wise, especially knowing that so many of them are in that football off season, and as the football strength conditioning guy, I got to be mindful that we're going to end up having to be ready for football again, because we'll do spring ball. So, making sure that what they do in powerlifting helps powerlifting, but it's not too much taking away from football either, in the sense of we're not maxing every day. We're working through, just some kind of conjugate periodization of dynamic days and max effort days, and just learning what actual max effort is versus what I think a lot of football coaches think max effort is, or what they think dynamic effort is. And I say football coaches because those are usually your powerlifting coaches, and those, like you said earlier, those are just guys that get plugged in and collect a paycheck. Whereas I try to pride myself on being a football coach that's also a powerlifting coach, and that's a conversation I've had with Monty. The way I approach powerlifting is preparation for powerlifting meets. So our mindset, it's another way to really hammer nutrition and hydration and sleep and recovery. I have zero problems shutting a kid down in the middle of the week for training when it comes to powerlifting and saying, hey, your stuff's moving slow. You look sluggish. You look lethargic. What are your grades like? What's going on at home? We start diving into a lot of stuff. And that's one beautiful thing with powerlifting is I can take more time and talk to each kid that you don't always get with football, right? You're always up against the clock preparing for the next opponent, and you try to connect with each kid. But when you're in control of the schedule, like with powerlifting, and we are not going to a meet this weekend, or we are going to a meet this weekend, and there's downtime, it's a lot more time to build those relationships and have those conversations. What's going on? Hey, it's a bad day. Get like 10 minutes of mobility work and go home. Go foam roll, go take an ice bath, go walk around the track, just get away. Sometimes you just need to get out and go do something different, refocus yourself. Or, hey, you don't want to train at 7 a.m. All right, cool. Come after school. Come get 20 minutes of just technical work. Don't even bother putting a suit on. Let's just work on proficiency. So I think it's just, obviously I think the easy answer is to say it depends on each kid. But that's the truth. That's the truest answer. It's just learning how every kid handles the demands of training and the demands of competition, and where they're at with their mindset. If they're not the elite 12 to 14 for my team, I'm not going to put a whole lot of stress on them. I'm not going to push them the way I'm going to push somebody who's really supposed to, return to regional, make a contention for state, place higher at state, and we're going to have those conversations because some of these kids have never entered into that realm. My returning state qualifier has never had to return back to state. This is new, right? I've been around kids that have done that before, so I have an idea of what she should do, but I got to find out how she's going to react, how she's going to do that. She's also doing wrestling. She's also a cheerleader. She's a human being, so she's going to have human problems and human issues. and high school girl issues, just like high school boys have issues, So we're going to learn. This is November 30th. It'll be interesting to let you know what happens here, and by the middle of March. I really hope it's God's will that she's back at state, and I would really hope that it's in his will that she's able to earn a medal. And I hope that more girls go with her, not as companions on a trip, but as competitors also. I think the other thing is, if you're a young coach and you can get a chance to go to a big meet, go to a big meet. Go help. Go be an expediter. Go be a table worker. For God's sakes, please go be a table worker. Because one, it's always needed, but two, when you really learn about the sport and you really get your eyes open when you've never been around it, the very interesting intricacies of a powerlifting meet, and you really pay attention to, oh, this kid knows what they're doing, and this kid has just simply watched a bunch of YouTube videos and Instagram reels, and they think they have a clue, and they have zero clue, and then they go up and get stapled under the bar because all they've done is gone to Coach Instagram, who is just a genetic freak, and it's like, oh, buy my 8-week program, guaranteed to do this, and it's like somebody else's copy and pasted crap. You got into some stuff in there earlier that would be the really fun part for me. So you get into the mad scientist role. So you could look at it a few different ways. Now, we use here a 5-3-1 mixed with the West Side. To me, that 5-3-1 would be so versatile for what you're doing. You could do a reverse 5-3-1. So your meet would be your 1. Then you could do a speed week coming out. I don't know how many weeks you have, so I'm throwing this out there to just kind of see what you think. You come out and do a speed week as an off week, then do your 3 week, then do your 5 week, and then you're ready to hit your 1 week again. If you had that much time. If you didn't, then you'd have to adjust that. I think, in my mind, that would be the easiest model to tweak. How do you have to handle that? Because you can't have them kids taking maxes all the time. Yeah, we'll, one of the guys that's on our football staff is a long time. He's an ancient coach, and I can say that he's old, and he's if he ever listens to this, he's perfectly fine with it. But over these 4 years that I've worked with him on staff at Hendrickson, I've really started to glean off of him and learn from him. And so what you do is, if these kids are competing in like back-to-back weeks, maybe one meet is a heavier meet and the next meet is a lighter meet, and the goal is everything is every lift is a weight that you should be able to get all whites. So your goal is basically hit 9 whites. Well, if you're going to hit 9 whites, you're probably going to have to go a lot lighter to ensure technicality, because you shouldn't have any iffy, reaching weights. Right, your opener is a smooth opener. Maybe it's a slight increase on your second attempt, and it's an 85-90% on your third attempt. It's not even a max weight, and so you challenge. You have those intra competitions amongst themselves in the meets, right? You also teach them about taking the right amount of time in between lifts, taking all of that time that's allotted to them. I think what you talk about doing and manipulating between 5-3-1 and West Side is kind of what I'm trying to do right now. And I'm still kind of toying with that. I do like the reverse 5-3-1 idea. And I think that's something that I would definitely look into. I want to I always look at what we did last year and go, okay, great, that worked last year. I can't guarantee that it'll work this year. One, everybody that came back should be better from a year ago, even if they didn't consistently lift, like they're not in another sport that was already going, or they didn't come a whole lot. So I also have that to gauge. Like, it's going to be kind of a mad, like you said, it's going to be a mad scientist thing with some of these kids who they didn't come during the summer to workouts. They didn't come to open weight room very often before the season started officially. And they haven't pushed themselves. They haven't been eating well. So, it's going to be a little bit eye opening for some of these kids to be like, oh, if I really want to do this, I need to be more serious. I need to take better care of myself. Or I need to write a better program. There's that same side too. I'm always going to look at myself as much as I want the kids to look at themselves. I'm going to look at myself probably 2 to 3 times harder, because I'm always going to make sure that I can't fault myself for what I did or didn't do, so that there's at least more onus on that kid who, like I said, didn't take care of themselves leading into it. I think the other deal too is just mixing in a little more conditioning. Not to say we're going to go out and run miles, but we're trying to get in there and mix in some sprints. Now, if they're already in like a second and third sport that's doing that, then I'm not going to do too much with that. But if they're not in an additional sport that's pushing them from a conditioning standpoint, I think, some sled work, some small sprint work a couple times a week, even some jump plyometric work, just to change the stimulus, push them out of their comfort zone, weight maintenance for some, those are necessary things, right? The biggest thing we're talking about is being able to repeat and reload. Well, if you can't do that because you don't have a good, cardiovascular base, or you don't have a good conditioning base, then it really doesn't matter what your lifts are going to be, because at some point they're going to suffer because you just can't recover fast enough. So that's something that I want to look at doing a little bit more of, and just kind of mixing that in. When we do that with training, we do a lot of our activation and our warm-ups involve jump roping. Kids hate it. I love it because it's simple, it's easy, and man, 5-10 minutes of jump roping, that's a pretty solid activation. You got enough, you should have enough sweat going along with some other things that you should be able to at least get your suit on a little bit easier. And you become more proficient in a simple activity like jump roping. That's great. And then you can translate that. At the end of the day, powerlifting is something that you can do well into your advanced years. We just saw Rudy Kadlub, set masters records. So there's no reason why you can't be lifting heavy or powerlifting. Obviously, we know injuries and things like that, but you can learn life skills about training and about lifting that'll take you beyond your high school career. So, I hope I find the right mix of the programming standpoint. I believe I will. I'm going to definitely pick your brain a little bit more as this season goes, and pick Monty's brain and just kind of figure how are my kids responding? I send him lifting videos, and I'm always asking for feedback, and then I relay that same information to my kids. I've FaceTimed him before and let him, I've got an earbud in one and the kid has it in the other, and we're real. It don't get much better than a real time FaceTime while you're trying to get better. When Monty's yelling at me and to do my part better as a coach and spotter, so the kids hearing that I'm getting coached, so they're a little weirded out, but at the same time they're like, well, if coach is getting coached, I should probably listen, because the one coaching coach is also coaching me and he's coaching me. So I think they think they know that we have some idea. I don't know.
You were talking about conditioning, And I agree. The last powerlifting meet I was at, you look around. Now a lot of them are adults, but they don't look like lifters. They're strong, but their legs aren't defined. Got bellies on them, stuff like that. Seeing that, we brought that back to the gym over the years, and you were talking about the conditioning piece. We added in winning warm-ups. The kids hate them. I mean, you do 2 sets. You do 2 exercises, 4 sets of 25 reps on the GHR, and then flip around and then hit the other side, so you're hitting quads on one, you're hitting your hamstrings on the other, or push-ups and face pulls. They handled football way better this year because of that conditioning. You don't give them a bunch of time to set. You hit this one, get through them so that we can actually do the list we want to do. So I agree with you on the conditioning. I think it gets left out a lot. Granted, you're not going to be out there running them miles, but there needs to be some sort of conditioning involved.
There does, for sure. Even for myself, I'm always trying to push. I'm diving into this 400 yards of lunges daily thing that Corey G was put together. He called it Lunges and Learning. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I'm like 3 days into it. I saw Josh Storms doing it at Florida State, his own thing. So I can tell you my legs have never been pumped like this. But it's one of these things where it's like the mental fortitude that it takes to just keep putting one foot in front of the other in something that is just not fun. I don't know if anybody loves lunges, you're a sadistic person and God help you. But, I'll jog a little bit, I'll walk a little bit. That's fine. But the lunging thing it's tough. And then you add in going up and down stairs for class. That's not good. But as far as leg accessory work, man, I don't need any more. I don't need a leg curl. I probably need to do a little more on the Nordics. I realize that my numbers aren't going up like they need to because of my hamstrings and my back. I need to get stronger. But I think, through the winning warm-ups, we've added those in a little bit as well. Just that GPP, man, you just can't neglect how important that is for that. There's usually some kind of back movement in everything we do. That's a West Side thing. Louis is big on that. Pull-ups and being able to do pull-ups is huge. We band assist. We've devised a way from something that was seen on the internet, taking 2 barbells across the spotter arms to do dips. So we're doing dips more, and so just those little things where you sneak in, you as the coach realize the value, what's being done. They think, oh, well, I'm just doing some dips. My triceps are going to look nicer in my shirt. My back's going to look nicer because my pull-ups are going up. All the while you're like, your bench press is going to go up because your triceps are getting stronger. So you're going to be able to lock out better. Your grip strength is improving because your pull-up numbers are improving, or you're dropping a different color band. Your back is getting stronger. So all 3 lifts will get better. So you play this mind game with them on this stuff. So they feel like you're giving something to them. You're getting something out of it. We're all winning at the end of the day. So, stuff like that I think is huge. I love the sled drag face pull combo, man. That's a huge one. I need to do more of that just for myself, but blow up your back a little bit, get the heart rate up, and work that pull motion and just, really blow up that back. One of the things that we're trying to work on is putting that bar a little bit lower on everybody's back for squats. I think early on, everybody high bar squats, it's damn near sitting on the top of the spine, and you slowly start trying to inch it down, and then they worry about it falling off. And I'm like, it's not going to fall off if your shoulders get a little bit bigger, you squeeze it a little bit tighter, and your back's stronger, you're going to be able to handle this. And then they slowly start to realize how everything kind of interconnects. And then you start seeing these light bulbs go off, and you're like, okay, the hook is set. Keep reeling them in, and the payoff is the meat, particularly when they just, at the end of the day, and they're hitting some form of a PR, and it may not be a numerical PR. It may be, a weight that just moved super, super slow, starts moving faster. And that goes back to something I talked about with the intentionality, and just really hammering about trying to move heavy weight faster, whether it's a max effort day or a dynamic day. Just understanding the importance of needing to move the bar fast, or as fast as you can with whatever weight's on there. And so that dynamic days, there's a good bar speed with a challenging weight. And on max effort days, we're still keeping the intentionality of moving the bar with some speed, but understanding we're okay if it slows down just a little bit.
Now you kind of headed right where I wanted to go. It's really easy to get those kids plateaued, I'm sure. I mean, by the end of the season. I would think the obvious thing was as their form increases, their numbers are going to go up to prevent a plateau. The second one I was wondering on is time. You're always fighting time. So the better your dynamic day is, the better your bar speed is, should help you increase your max. But some of those seniors, they've kind of seen some of those tricks and got those worked out. So when you start running into some of them kids that are really stuck, what direction do you head?
Really getting them to understand, and this goes for all the kids, taking weight off the bar and getting over the gut check that it can be to take weight off the bar and realize, like, you're okay, you didn't die, and we're going to just go back to making things buttery smooth again, right? And reestablishing that sense of confidence and understanding that as the bar moves better and I refocus my intention on my technique, the numbers are going to come, and sometimes too, it's just, hey, I've pulled a kid out in the middle of a set and I said, dude, your mindset's wrong right now. Your body language is bad right now. There's no wonder why you're moving that weight so poorly. You're not trying to lift it. You're not trying to lift the weight. You're just trying to get through this, whatever it is. I was like, stop, get out, shake it off, get after it again. And sometimes that does help. Just having those small little conversations and reframing and refocusing the mind. Rest and recovery is key. But like you said, you're always fighting time. But I think the other thing too is getting kids to understand the importance of resting in between sets when we're doing the main movements. And then when we're not, and we're doing the accessory work, and maybe we turn some of the accessory work into circuits and giant sets under a certain number of seconds of recovery or transition, understanding those time manipulations. Maybe you're hitting a plateau because you're not taking enough time in between your sets to recover and be ready for the lift. You're just trying to get through it. You stack enough get through it kind of days, well, you're just going to stay there. You're probably not going to push through what you think you're pushing through. You're going to end up probably regressing more. But then on the other side, sometimes you're going to have to put your head down and just keep taking one step at a time. And what you grind through ends up being pretty successful, within reason and never compromising or trying not to compromise form, obviously, and safety. But, sometimes, man, you're going to have grind times, and you just got to mentally do your best to prepare them and say, hey, this is just a sucky point right now. We've tried the rest manipulation, we've tried the bar speed stuff, and just lowering the weight. It is what it is. Maybe you just need to change your diet. Maybe you're not eating right. You're not enough protein, not enough carbohydrates, not enough fluids, not enough sleep. There's so many factors that can go into plateaus that, the biggest deal is control what you can control from a coaching standpoint, and then, talk to them about having the understanding of what's going on and what are they doing and how can they change things to help themselves out. Maybe it's as simple as the playlist needs to be different, needs to be better. Kids are weird. Sometimes the wrong songs are on every time you're trying to do a heavy weight, and you need to have a conversation with whoever the DJ is and tell them to change that so that you can get your mind right.
In the programming, squat and deadlift, will you flip-flop those? So 1 week your squat is your main lift, and then use a deadlift as an accessory, and then the next week your deadlift's the main lift and use your squat as accessory? Or will you try to hit them all throughout the course of the week? What does your week look like, I guess?
This week, coming out of the Thanksgiving break, we have done a couple of days where we're hitting a squat and a deadlift in the same day. Obviously, one is a little more focused than the other. In a perfect world, we have more of a dedicated day for each, particularly for the amount of novice lifters we have. I think this year we'll be able to kind of play with that, and then let's say deadlift is a primary mover, with some variation of a squat. So we may pair, a deficit deadlift with a high box squat, or we may pair an elevated deadlift with a low box squat, or hell, even just a front squat, just to change it up. And as now we're fortunate right now to have some SSBs, so we may throw some SSBs in there, or we're going to do more good mornings with the deadlift, just to work the posterior chain. That's another way to do it, and that's definitely something that I want to look at, and how kids respond is, do they have to squat, bench, deadlift every week, or can they take a week to, focus on a more deficient lift or a more proficient lift, and put the other one in maybe we're doing, a rack pull instead of a full go deadlift, and we're just working that top end, or we're reverse banding stuff, whatever, and just kind of see how they respond to that. I think that's the beauty of having a lot of different toys and the space to do it. One of the things that I'm thinking is maybe we load up and do some belt squats. We have the landmine capability, and so maybe we use the belt squat as a more primary deal, take the load off the spine in preparation. So we're still getting that same movement pattern, but we're not having so much compression on the spine. And like I said, we pair that with a deadlift variation. I've talked with Monty about, changing up. If you're a conventional deadlifter, take some time, do some sumo, and vice versa. If you're a wide stance squatter, take some time, do a narrow stance, or a more narrow stance. If you're typically a narrower stanced person, take some time to do that. Same thing with bench press, changing up the variations, boards, close grip, incline. We don't really do a whole bunch of decline. We don't have decline benches, and I'm still leery of stacking up a bunch of stuff and asking you to lay backwards. So we don't do much in the way of decline, but we will use one of the few uses of a BOSU ball that I find acceptable, that I know I've seen Donnie. I think I got it from Donnie Thompson or Zach Evanish. I saw, or whoever I saw it first, but the floor press variation using the BOSU ball underneath you, it's really good for the scap and the shoulder, so you're not so flat on the floor. There's a little less banging of the elbows, and mixing in, dead bench, I think is a huge one. Especially you see a lot of kids get stuck right in that middle and they can't lock out. Obviously part of that is tricep, but the other part is just getting used to pushing that bar off of that sticking point, and elevating it a little bit off the chest. Especially if you don't have boards, or you don't have anything to kind of do that, dead bench is a really good alternative to that. And obviously you don't have to have the amount of spotters and accessory people that you need when you're doing board press. You got to have a spotter, you got to have a board person, and you probably helps to have a shirt person. So, there can be a lot of people involved in one person's lifting, that's not always conducive from a high school team standpoint. Like when you're always, like you said, you're fighting a time constraint, whether it's how much time do you have for the training session that day? How much time do you have in between meets? What else is left what other buckets are left to be filled type stuff.
And I was even hinting around with that a little bit more, like Louis said, if your bench press takes you 2 seconds to grind out, if you can improve that by 0.2 of a second, what are the odds that you're going to make that lift? Where just you're fighting that time. How long can you strain before you give out? So if you can hit that lift faster, that's kind of open up the conversation of accommodating resistance. Do you use accommodating resistance?
We're starting to. We're introducing some bands, both with powerlifting and with football. I don't have a lot of chains. That is something that, I'd like to dive more into. The other deal will be some form of an isometric, into a complete deal. So varying the pausing, particularly on squats and bench press. I'm hesitant and careful to vary pausing with deadlifts, simply because to me, you do have to be a little more proficient, because when you pause deadlift, I feel like it can be easy to get out of technical proficiency. Not to say that you couldn't in a squat, but you just kind of can have that exposure in a pause deadlift. And then, some pause deadlifts can be, with kids, you have to kind of be able to give definitive, like, where does the bar need to be in a pause? You go, hey, pause 2 inches here. They're like, they're it's like holding the 6-inch hold, foothold. 6 inches looks like 12, looks like 24, so they're pausing it at the top. And I'm like, that's not where you're going to pause that, so that we'll mix in some isometric stuff, even as a primer, whether that's that slight bottom position or right below the knee, sticking point, pulling it into the rack, or even bench press, pushing it into the spotter arms. That will work with that. And like I said, moving into more of the band work. We haven't done anything from a reverse band standpoint. I think eventually we'll get there. There's obviously stuff that I need to learn more, and the how and the why, particularly when it comes to the conjugate stuff, and just when to put it in, why to put it in, what purpose is it serving. I'm not somebody that's going to put something for the kids to do that I've never done myself, because I need to be, in my opinion, I need to be able to explain the why, because they're going to want to know why. And I need to be able to explain it and be able to understand what it's supposed to feel like so that I can better help them. If I don't know what it's supposed to feel like and I don't know how to do it and I don't know how to explain it, then why am I asking them to do it? That's just my thought process and theory. I believe a lot of people would probably agree and be in that same camp. But if we're going to use the accommodating resistance, they're going to understand the purpose behind it. And it's going to be at a suitable weight that allows for the desired stimulus. We're not just going to throw super heavy bands on with 40% and the bar never moves. And I think that's the other deal too, is one of the toughest accommodating resistances is tempos. And just understanding that time manipulation of how to move the bar, whether it's in the concentric or the eccentric. But you see it a lot of times with kids and their squats and their bench presses, they drop like rocks, or the bar comes crashing into their chest, and you're like, well, why do you think you didn't get that? I mean, you sank to the bottom in the hole, and you took every bit of energy that you had preserved, and you have nothing left to get out of the hole. So, focusing on that drop, on that descent, or bringing the bar down, learning how to do better walkouts and lift offs and handouts. I think those are all things too that have to be addressed. So doing those even just with bands alone, and understanding how that's supposed to work and how that's supposed to trigger so that you know what to do. We'll probably do some banded squats and bench press in the sense of like putting the band around the wrists or around the knees to really focus on driving knees out. I know it's not the normal accommodated resistance, but there is a sense of resistance, right? When you're getting that knee valgus and you're really working on learning how to turn on the glutes and stay open and stay tight. And you need to find those tricks to help them, to do that better. And that's it's not just a powerlifting thing. Again, those are transferable lifting techniques that you can then take to your sport and take with you the rest of your life, and then pass those tips and tricks on. Because one of the things that I want is, like we talked about earlier, is those team leaders will, not that you have to be the know-it-all at the gym, but pass on the knowledge that was given to you, because one, it's not yours to hold on to, and two, I'm getting it from somewhere else, and I'm telling you where I'm getting it from. Joe Schmo on Instagram is probably not, and they probably stole it from somebody else that's way smarter, but they just don't want to give that person credit, because they failed to remember that part in like English class and social studies about citing your sources. So it's funny that stuff keeps coming back around, in various forms, not always in the writing form, but just giving credit where credit's due.
You hit 3 or 4 different things in there that I was going to touch on. So the band on the knees, we do that a lot. We do it in a box squat. Do you do it free squat or box squat? I like the box. I'll tell you why, and then you can explain why you like what you do if it's different. But you can get them on that box, you can get them comfortable, and then you can teach them to drive the knees out from a safe spot into the band, and then come up off there so they can feel it all, where it seems like it's a lot for them to grasp if you just do it in a free squat with that band.
So I'm not married to one camp or the other. That's something that I'm going to look at doing is one, we're probably going to box squat more than we have in years past. I think that's another way to keep kids healthy during the competition season is to box squat a little bit more and vary the heights of the boxes the best that you can. Sometimes it's easier than not. I think it's probably easier to always find a high box than it is to find the right low box for kids. They seem to find the low box one time and then all of a sudden they never find it again. But they always have zero issue finding the high box or some variation of a high box, whatever you have access to in your facility or school. But yeah, it's interesting. You talk about that. We box squatted today. And one of the feedbacks that I got for one of my boys from Monty was about driving his knees out. And I was like, band might be not be a bad idea right here. So that's definitely something that I would look at bringing into the next week is helping him and just everybody in general. But, I think that that's a great way to, like you said, teach it, get them to feel it. I like the band on a free squat as part of those warm up sets. I don't want it necessarily as a working set. I like it, if you're doing, let's say your first set is like a 40 or 50% with like, you're going to do 8-10 reps, maybe even 5 on like a double day or whatever. I like it as just an additional, hopefully it's turning on the glutes or it's helping you understand what we say when we mean, driving the knees out. And because, the other deal too is right. The issue at the knee, you kind of have to look up and down the chain, right? What's going on with the feet? Are the knees closing because the feet are closing? Are the feet planted right? What is the hip doing? Is the hip shifting? Is this the chest pitching forward? Or are they sitting too far back? And those are always deals. My question to you would be, how do you coach the sit back on the box? Because I think when people say box squat, they all fear it. Why? Because the kid's just going to come plop themselves down on the box. Now they're getting the additional compression from the bar on their spine with gravity, and they're like, good morning, the bar up. So how do you coach that so that, one, they're not crashing down on the box, they're kind of sitting back in an appropriate spot, and then where do you go from there on the way back up?
Okay, so you're gonna have to take this from different levels of lifters. When the new lifters come in, they have no hamstrings. So you've got one or two options. Raise the box to meet them and let their hamstrings develop, or be okay with a little bit of a plop. That's what I've seen. As they get stronger through the reverse hyper, through the Nordics, through the deadlift, through different things you do, then they can hold that all the way down into the box like they should. But that's a growth thing that has to happen. And you just have to understand what's happening and then coach it all the time. Hey, you plopped. Hey, you plopped. You may have to get underneath there and show them, hey, you're letting go at the bottom. And then as they get more competent and they understand and they can make that feel more like their speed squat, they get pickier. But it's a maturity thing that has to happen. The easiest way is to pull them out or something like that and have them hit a little bit higher of a box and stay tight in it. Because the other thing you'll notice is when they get down there, they'll let everything go. Well, then they have to gather it all back up, and they almost use that movement to get off the box. Where if they just would have stayed tight, it would be more like a free squat. But see, I don't do geared. Let me make that clear. Geared's a little bit different. I'm talking raw. So when I'm teaching that also, the first thing I want them to do, and Dave Tate talks about this, is shift their hips back just a little and then open their knees to find the box. That helps them get deeper on the box and get a little more comfortable. But them hamstrings, yeah, as you watch your younger lifters, they'll all plop all the time. And you just have to use a conjugate system and bring that up while you're bringing up their skill level and their proficiency. Is that right? There's a bunch of other coaches out there that probably have a better way. That just seems to be what I have saw.
I would agree with you on that. I think that that's one of those deals. Like you're right. You take you err on the side, like, like Jim Windler talks about. You're going to err on that lighter start, the lighter max start. Well, you err on the lighter lack of training, and then allow the kid to teach, like Coach I alluded to too. He says all the time, you're going to teach us what we need to know about you. So you teach us through your movement or lack of movement. Like you said, do you have hamstrings? Do you not have hamstrings? Can you stay tight? Can you comprehend what we're actually asking you to do? There's that. As much as I love the inclusivity of the weight room, that also means bringing in those that have zero, and I mean absolutely zero understanding of what goes on in a weight room, and it's tough, because I know what lifting, I know what powerlifting, and I know what strength conditioning have done for me. And I would never want to be that coach or that guy that turns a kid away from an opportunity to better themselves, because then I'm gatekeeping a place that's not mine to keep. I'm not talking about kicking a kid out because they're being a knucklehead and they're putting people at risk. I'm talking about, hey, you don't meet this standard or this qualification, you don't get to be here. One, it's kind of tough to do at a public school, but two, it's not my job, and you just never know who's going to turn into something, just because you invest a little time in them, even if it makes you annoyed. It's not supposed to always be smooth and easy, right? If every kid was super proficient, then what would be the use of coaches?
You'll learn more from the ones that need help way more than you ever learn from the ones that know how to do it.
Oh yeah.
And then what always has me thinking, when you watch a kid plop when he comes in the weight room for the first time, and you're trying to help him feel it, it's like, what would happen if the box wasn't there? You could never get that kid down there. Or if you could, it would be such a light weight that it really wouldn't do him much good anyhow. So, I know people have feelings on the box squat, not the box squat, but in my mind, when I watch a kid that can't hold that bottom half without crashing into the box, it's like, what would that have looked like had the box not been there and there wasn't any pins to catch him, or whatever the case may be? I would rather err on the side of caution, and maybe the progress is a little slower, but that kid lives to lift another day. I would venture to say that more injuries happen in a weight room through poor squatting than probably anything else.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, I mean, going on to another thing you talked about ISO pulls into bars. That's one we haven't done out here in a while, but I really like that. Do you find if you're working with the right weight and you're pulling up into them bars, it really teaches that athlete to get into the bar where their form actually gets better?
Yeah, I like it. I like it too. We've done it a couple different ways. We've done it as like a primer before a lift, as part of the warm up. But we've also done it as, like, let's say I'll set up just like a bare bar, and then there's another bar behind them that has whatever the prescribed weight is. So they're pulling, maybe it's a 3 to 5 second pull, hold, and then they're off. They step back and they're knocking out a single or a double. So we're having that right away immediate feedback. And so they can get it and remember. One of the things that I kind of want to do, and this occurred to me today watching some of my girls deadlift, is we talk about pulling the slack out. Well, if you've done it long enough, you understand what that means. But these kids look at you like you're stupid. They have no clue. And then when they do it, you think, aha, they've got it. They have no clue that they got it. They have no clue what they did. So I kind of want to try to find a way where, like, if you do it right with a certain weight, the bar begins to, the weight looks like it's levitating before you pull, right? It's not always going to be that way with every weight, but it's just kind of finding that, I guess, pull the slack out weight levitating. I don't know how to phrase it, but just kind of get that, like, this is what it should feel like. Now, when we put the heavier weight on, it's gonna feel a little bit different. Because the other thing too, and I know you, and I'm sure you've seen this, is they want to put themselves in a relatively compromised position, almost like they're trying to get way under the bar, and then they pull themselves into position while still trying to pull the bar up at the same time. And I think that's when you start to get a lot of those super rounded backs, is because now they're way out of whack because their setup is wrong. And that's one of those where I'm like, whoa, we're done, stop. They'll refocus that.
They'll make it a 2-part lift instead of a 1-part lift. And if you watch them, they'll get their butt way too low, and then the first thing to move is their back as opposed to their butt. Their butt should be the first thing that moves. But going back to what you were talking about, slack on the bar, because I've thought about that a lot. How do you coach that? Because technically, if you want to get like super technical about it, 225, there is no slack in the bar, right? I started trying to coach it as listen for the click. When you hear the barbell hit the top of the weights, then you know you're in, and then pull. And then that seemed to help a little bit more than the slack, because there's an audible sound that happens, and then they can kind of grasp that a little better. But I don't know. And then one more thing before I forget. You were talking about that. Swede Burns does a video, So You Think You Can Deadlift, for Dave Tate. You want to watch?
I love his stuff, man.
That is the best deadlift video I have ever seen. He talks about everything you talked about, getting the scaps back, getting that bar to almost float before you pull. That one might be one of the best videos for a kid that's really serious about deadlifting to watch, because he breaks it down so easy.
It's like, man, just all the ones that he does, though, I just feel are just like I need to go back and just rewatch them for my own self, right? But him and the way Dave Tate and the way Ed Cohn just break stuff down, and obviously I get it. Like, these are some of the best who have ever done it, but as well as I do, there's plenty of coaches or there's plenty of really great lifters or even just great athletes that have no concept of being able to explain what they did, because all they're going to do is, I don't know, I just did it. Well, no kidding, you just did it. I'm asking you how. What was the process? How did you? I don't know, man. I just do it. Well, great. The majority of us can't just do it. That's why we're asking you. But when you're able to do it and then teach it, and you're right. Like you said earlier, you're going to learn a whole lot from the ones that cannot than just from the ones that can. But I think it's important too for the kids, as they get more developed, to explain to you processes and feelings, because then they're a little more aware, right? If you ask just a completely new novice lifter, how's it feel? I don't know. It doesn't help. Like, I need specifics, right? Versus like, your more advanced lifters are like, yeah, I felt that here. I felt my grip slip here, or I felt tighter there. I don't know. Jumping to bench press, I don't know how many times you got to remind kids, close your fist around the bar. Like, We got thumbs out. We got suicide grip. I'm like, well, what are you doing? And so we try to reinforce about stack joints, about power leakage, especially with the feet and bench press, right? And just keeping. I've gotten to the analogy of like, hey, you have two legs, like you have two prongs and an outlet, and if you don't have both prongs plugged in, you ain't got no power, buddy. And they're like, then you see a little bit of a light bulb every now and then, because then some of them are like, what the hell is a prong? What the hell is an outlet? I'm like, oh gosh, all right. You know that thing where your wall charger is? Oh yeah, that's an outlet. So
I stole it from Cal Dietz. He helped me kind of understand this a little bit better when he was on the podcast. But then bench pressers, I quit really trying to talk to him about leg drive as much as digging that big toe into the ground. Mm-hmm. Just make it as simple as possible. Get that big toe dug in the ground, and you would be shocked at the immediate switch they get. They're activated. As soon as that toe hits the ground, they have no choice but to use leg drive. It's crazy. But it took all of the thinking out of it for them. Because once the bar gets heavy, all they know is to get it off their chest. If you can break that down to the bare minimum, squat too. I don't coach much in the feet anymore other than big toe. Deadlift, big toe. That seems to set everything into the ground. It gets their glutes firing first. I mean, the dude's a genius. He wouldn't be where he is if he hadn't. But he takes something so simple and it has so much carryover.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Now, one more thing about the deadlift, and we can talk about something else. Do you ever do a box deadlift? Have you ever seen Louis Simmons do that? I've talked about it on here before, but I don't know if you've ever done it.
I think we've tried it one time. It's been a while. I've seen it. I'd have to go back and revisit, the teaching points of it. We tend to do more of the deficit and the raised than we do from the box standpoint. And I have no idea as to why. Probably because it's one of those that I forget about, I'll be honest. You kind of, as you start going, right, you kind of get into that tool bag, toolbox, whatever analogy you want to use, and you're just like, okay, I know these, I know how to coach them, I know when to program them. We can change it up here or there, and then you're like, every now and then you're like, oh, forgot about that one. Even with the isometric pulls, the pause stuff always cycles in for me. But I'll forget about isometric pulls. And so just throwing that in, it's probably something that I need to, like I said, go back and revisit. I know what you're talking about, but it's been a while since I've put it in the program or even done it myself. It
seems like, especially young guys that haven't done much deadlifting, that's where we start, because it teaches them to shoot their hips into the bar. It also doesn't let their butt get too low, like we talked about earlier. And then it gives them a little bit of time to flex. Like when Louis did it in his video, he'd have them flex into the bar, like you were talking about earlier, and get that float. Then he'd have them set it back down and then flex and pull and then shoot their hips in. You're not going to lift heavy weight doing that.
Right.
But the form and the hips, because it doesn't seem like they understand how to shoot their hips into that bar. And the quicker their hips can take it, the more they're going to lift.
I like that. Yeah, that's definitely something to revisit, and look at adding in, definitely as a teaching deal. For us in this month of December, it's one of those deals that I think I want to do a better job of really hammering in on technique before we really, really, really focus on big weight and heavy weight. We're going to have and that's part of the deal is, if your best lifts occur in January, then the program was terrible on my end. And what are we doing? Because just because you had one good meet in January does not guarantee you anything for regionals. And even if you're a girl and you can hit a qualifying total, and you can't replicate that at regional or state, then, again, that's where I'm looking at myself going, what's going on? So I think those are, there's a lot of things from tonight that I'm thinking and going, okay, let's look at that. Let's break it down. And I think that's partly why I like to dedicate a day to squat, a day to bench, a day to deadlift early on. But there is also the need to kind of be able to do, you need to train and have some kind of squat variation and deadlift variation, a bench and a squat, or a bench and a deadlift, because in a meet, you got to do all three. So if your body has never had the stimulus of 2 out of the 3, I don't think there's any reason to do all 3 in the same day from a training standpoint. But I think you need to be able to touch a little bit as you get closer to your competition for the high school age. Your advanced, more professional lifters, that's totally different. And even with raw and geared, how you vary those is different, But I think they need that stimulus ahead of the competition, because their body needs to learn how to adapt and recover and repeat it. Otherwise, we're going in and we've had a whole bunch of pieces. We've never put them all together. And the first time they're doing it is in a high pressure situation, because I don't care how good or bad the kid is. Nobody wants to bomb out. Nobody wants to fail an attempt. I've seen absolute first timers just be distraught, missing their very first squat attempt in a meet for the foot went forward. It had nothing to do with the weight. It was just a purely small technical, racked it, missed the command, and they're done for the whole meet. I mean, you're trying to you don't even have to worry about a plateau. You're trying to pull them out of the tank like now. And so I think that's where, reinforcing the commands. I think it was during our Christmas break sessions, we pulled up the rule book and we, like a classroom. I don't care what anybody says. The weight room is a living classroom, and if you don't believe it, come watch. You come watch, and you figure out. I have every diversity under the sun in a weight room at once, at 72 kids when we're maxed out capacity. You can't tell me that I can't differentiate in a weight room. Good luck, because there's a lot of differentiation that goes on. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But they have to be able to know the rules, and so, like I said, we pulled it up. I said, read it out loud to everybody. There, come over here to the rack. Now, you're the judge. You're the side judge. And it's a no pressure situation, but we're going through the mechanics of it. And again, that's what's one of those deals as a coach. If you don't teach that, that's your fault. That ain't the kid's. When the kid gets to the meet, it's not the judge's fault, or it's not the judge's responsibility to teach the kids the rules. It's the judge's job to reinforce the rules. The kids should know the rules before they get on to the deal. They should know about the jewelry. They should know about the costume. They should know about, all these other procedures. So that's a deal where you have to spend time teaching it. It's no different than teaching situational stuff in team sports, in field and court sports. Like you gotta take time to teach them. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Now, we switched topics right in the middle of that. So let me go back to what you were talking about before. Putting a squat day in, a deadlift day in, and a bench press day in. I'm not opposed to that, and you take it however you want. I kind of worked through that one year and kind of did it that way. You might watch at how long you do it, because that is killer on their CNS. And you'll start watching their attitudes just drop, because it's just heavy all the time. It's a grind. But where I really noticed it was they got slow. For me, and what we do here, I found it was better maybe in football wrestling, maybe not powerlifting, but in football wrestling, if I made like the squat, whatever squat, the main lift, and then did a 5x5 behind it with the deadlift. Then the next week, max that squat or max that deadlift and did the squat as a 5x5. And then the third week finished it out as a 3x3.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with what you're saying. You have to get them in shape for it. But I think if you do it too long, it really wears on them hard. And then both numbers will drop. Their squat and their deadlift will drop.
Mm-hmm.
One because of speed, and the other one is just because they're wore out.
Yeah. And when we've done it, it's not so much that all three are all out max efforts. It may be that in that week we're 5 on a squat, we're 3 on a bench, we're 2 on a deadlift, and we're waving it. But I don't know that I will do that as much this year. I think a lot of that had to do with so many new kids to lifting and powerlifting specifically, that there had to be more technical things taught. And I had 2 volunteer assistants last year, and I have 1 assistant this year, and unfortunately they're not. Last year they both had other duties and conflicts, so a lot of times it was me by myself with 50, 60 kids. And so it's like, if everybody's not doing the same thing at the same time, it's difficult to catch it. Now, going back to the part about the team leaders and stuff, I can vary that, right? And I can float around, and I'm learning that I have to organize my training session and where people are inside of that training session in terms of space, right? I need to make sure that the right lifters are grouped together. They need to understand that just because their best friend is on the team doesn't mean they need to lift with their best friend, especially if you and your best friend are on 2 different levels of ability. You need to make sure that you're around the right people that are pushing and challenging you, because it's tough to push yourself when you're kind of at a closer to an apex or an elite, But when you're around other people that are similar to you, that competition comes out inside of training, And I think that's one of the things that made Westside so, just desired, is when you win there, everybody was elite, right? It's hard to not push yourself when everybody's pushing themselves. When you go to Planet Fitness, is everybody elite in Planet Fitness? No, they're all on different levels. And then they have these weird rules where you can't push yourself. Then you go to another place like out here, you have Big Tex, or in the Dallas area, you have Metroflex, and you have Destination Dallas, where you have a variety of people that are training, and you get inspired by what they're doing. Like, the atmosphere is huge in terms of, in my opinion, the atmosphere in which you train in is huge, or plays a key role in how well your training goes, especially if you're just like having a bad day. You go into the training session and you're just around the right kind of people that can lift you up and push you, but no, it is definitely something to think about. And like I said, I'm always reevaluating in the midst of my programming. I never just write it and go, okay, it's done, it's finished, because there's just no way that you can guarantee whatever you wrote down or whatever you typed up is going to be exactly what's needed during the course of the season. I don't care what it is. There's no way you can guarantee me that, because you can't account for the injuries that actually occur, and 2, we're talking about dealing with humans, not robots, and we all have our own personal issues, that we try not to bring into the training session or whatever. So, like, you have to be able to go, oh, whoa, we got to pivot. This is not working. Or, hey, this is really not like I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I need to change it up. Or, I better not lose this, because whatever we're doing right now is freaking awesome. And I got to figure out how to keep this going, So I'm not married to one particular thing, and I just don't want to. My biggest deal is I don't want to be perceived as like, oh, he's just a flavor of the week, flavor of the month type coach. Like, we're going to have principles, we're going to have guiding, um, lines, but we're not going to be so rigid that we can't make adjustments, and like I said, so far this week we've married up a few different things. Shoot, man, I've gone back and found some, just old Elite FTS ebooks that I have, and I'm like, oh, I like this. Like, let's run this for 4 weeks. It's specifically designed for a novice power lifter. I feel like that's a lot of where we are at, and sometimes, man, the novice stuff is the best for everybody because it gives you more freedom to meet people at where they're at. And it's like diversification in the classroom. Oh, you're the GT kid, you're a little more advanced here. I give you the freedom to add 5-10 pounds every plate. You're not so good, stay at the same weight. Or hey, today you do this squat variation, you do this squat variation. You got a bum wheel, okay, let's do this. And just, I think sometimes we think we have to write to the outliers and we forget about the middle. And I think when we write to the middle, we're able to address the outliers on both ends a little bit better.
I agree with that 100%. So we've been going at this quite a while. I know you're a busy guy. Let me wrap up with this one. This is probably the most controversial one I could think of. The 1 rep max. It doesn't matter what room you're in. 10 coaches have 10 different ideas, and I'm not going to say one's better than the other. But in powerlifting, when do you decide that a kid's ready to start taking 1 rep maxes? What are you looking for? What does that athlete need to show you?
The biggest deal is proficiency in the movement. First and foremost, we're not going to 1 rep anybody that hasn't spent time developing proficiency in the movement. The other thing to me is how often are you tripling or doubling heavier and heavier weight, and how much is that jumping? Because to me, and I'm honestly, like, my mindset behind 1 rep maxing from a team training standpoint, whether it's football or whatever, is really starting to shift, right? At the end of the day, and even with powerlifting, what is it that we're asking the athlete to do, right? We're asking them to give their best performance in a multiple fashion, right? In a powerlifting meet, we're asking you to give me 3 really good lifts, but I need you to do it 9 times. Okay? I'm asking you to give me your best effort on the football field for the course of an entire game. At some point in a powerlifting meet, yeah, you're going to have to just empty the tank for the 1 rep. And so we build to that because that's the specific of that sport. But like in football, we're not asking for 1 play in a one-off situation, right? We're asking for a repetitive ability. So to me, if we can 3 rep and 2 rep, and the movement proficiency is getting there. And I think the other thing, what we've talked about a lot tonight, is that bar speed. Is the bar continuing to improve? Is the bar speed continuing to get better inside of those triples and doubles? If the bar speed is that, it is, and the movement proficiency is going to be there, then it's no doubt that the 1 rep max is going to be ready. But if you're consistently having to grind doubles, how are you really going to have is your one rep really going to be that much better than what a double is? Man, if you smoke, let's just say, hey, you smoke 315 on bench press for 2, I have no doubt that you're probably getting, closer to a 330 and then maybe even eventually a 350 press. If you smoke it, on squat, maybe, you're not far from a 350 in a meet, but the meets and the 1 rep maxes are like, they're the tests that you've prepared for, right? Well, if you're super prepared for the test, yeah, you're going to do well on the test. But is all that going to go away when the test is done, right? Or the other thing is, again, dealing with high school kids and human beings, the day that you're supposed to max, it may just be the worst day of your life. Something happened to you. Something way far outside of your control happened to you, and you are just not in the right mindset. I mean, again, you don't know what the answer is going to be. Do I think that they're worthwhile? Yes. At the end of the day, it's human nature to find out who can move the most weight. I don't care who you are. At some point, you want to know, can I still move a certain weight? Can I even just do this? What's the best I can do at my age? Like, I'm sorry, but it's human nature to just test these things. Otherwise, why would we keep trying? But I don't think it's necessary to do all the time. I don't think it's necessary to do as often as some coaches would love to do, because exactly what you talked about. The grind on the CNS is only so finite, to the point where you're going to break it down, right? I talk about a car redlining. How many times can you redline the car before you break it? Well, how many times can I 1 rep max you before I break you? It's not my job. It's not my goal to break you and redline you. My goal is get you close, get you a taste, bring you back down, recharge it, and run it back. And then, wave those cycles so that when we finally say, let it all out, you're ready to let it all out because you've come so close, and then you're there. The other deal is, man, I guarantee you, if you were to just say, hey, open weight room, and just stand back and watch, what is the first thing that most kids are going to go do? 1 rep max on deadlift and bench press. And then they're going to go curl in front of the mirror. At least for the guys. So my other thought process is, if I'm not teaching them how to properly lift and even 1 rep max at least once or twice in a year, I'm leaving some unnecessary stones unturned, because at least if I have taught it in a controlled, safe environment towards the end of a year, like a school year, not directly after a season, then I can say, okay, well, if they all summer just max out while they're gone away from me, hopefully they paid attention to something. But, it's kids, and they all have way more knowledge than what we all have, because we all had the same amount of knowledge that they have now when we were their age. And so I think sometimes we forget that. I'm just as guilty, of getting on to kids and be like, well, did you really listen to all your coaches and teachers when you were a teenager? And the answer is probably no.
That's probably about the most accurate answer I've heard to that question yet. I mean, you nailed it. You could tell that you've been around and seen them.
Yeah.
They're going to max, whether it be at a buddy's house or what, they're going to do it. So at least you have a way of maybe helping control that and not letting it get out of hand. Well, Coach, I could talk another hour on this stuff, but I know people only have an attention span of so long. So we may have to pick this up another day, but I appreciate your time. I know you got a lot going on right now. Holidays starting to hit your real heavy part of the powerlifting season and getting kids ready. So thanks very much for coming on. I've been wanting to do it for a while, and I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for all you do. And I'm looking forward to just getting more and more connected, man. And just wish you all the best.
Well, thank you, Coach. I really appreciate it, and I hope your season goes well.
Thank you, sir. Likewise.